discovered through your experiences. So welcome. Let me unmute you. Here we go. There we go. Now we can hear you now.
All right. I was just faking it. I was just moving my lips. Right. I'm so happy to be here. This is what I live for. I wasn't expecting to be an autism parent, and no one is. And yet, almost 24 years later, it's really awesome to be able to reach out and help people. I get emails and messages every day. We're seeing patients from about 20 states. And, the book is out sharing our basic protocols from the center, and it's in 2 languages, so it's finding its way around the world. It's really fun to do this, so I'm happy to be here tonight.
Yay. Well, we just can't wait to hear more about what your work has been and maybe what's happened in your family. And so please take it away.
Okay, I'm going to do a little PowerPoint here, and I'm going to first share, a little bit about me so that people understand, where I'm coming from. And then I'll do a little bit about just autism itself, just facts and fun things to know about it and how the language and politics of autism is changing. But then I really want to share tonight the health challenges of autism. That was a mystery to me and to my husband. We didn't understand that. And when we went to the doctor, you have about a 15-minute visit, which, is about all they can give you with our medical model today. And I just felt like I needed to reach deeper for answers and find out what was going on. And I've always been kind of a science nerd, so I was digging into research and going to conferences and learning from really wonderful doctors. So I've put it together in a little presentation tonight, and I'll go over it and tell you about some of the things I do in my practice to support vibrant health on the autism spectrum.
Great.
Okay, let me make sure I'm going to boot this up correctly. Let me get to slideshow. Okay, is it up?
It's up. Looks great.
Okay, great, awesome. Okay, so, being in it so long, almost 24 years, everyone was about autism awareness, and I finally said, you know what, I'm tired of autism awareness. I want some action. So I came up with this little slogan that what we do at my center is translating the knowledge, the research, the science into action, because, as an autism mom, I don't feel awareness is enough anymore. And I know that if there are autism families listening tonight, they get that, they understand that. So I have a BS in genetics from Ohio State University. My Doctor of Chiropractic came from National University of Health Sciences near Chicago. And like I said, I've been an autism mom for almost 24 years. And I wanted to do some disclosures. On the left, you're going to see that I do a lot of volunteering. I've worked at my center for over 10 years without a salary. It's just how I give back to the autism community. I have a nonprofit, also a volunteer position, the Unprescription Foundation for Autism. I volunteer on our state rehabilitation council, where we advise the Division of Rehab Services. And in the past, I've been a member of the advisory panel to the Boy Scouts of America National Disabilities Awareness Committee. And the Jamboree, the National Jamboree site's about 10 miles from my house, the permanent Jamboree site. So my husband's a Scout Master, and we go and we're really involved with Scouts BSA is the new name of it. Financial relationships, I am a paid speaker on NCMIC, that's the largest insurer of chiropractors in the nation. I am an author of a book, and I got an advance for writing the book. I haven't made any royalties yet, but and then at my center, we do sell supplements. I didn't want to sell supplements when I opened up, but sometimes people had trouble finding it. So I just wanted to disclose that when I talk about supplements, I do sell them at my center. So that's a financial relationship there I wanted to reveal. Okay, here's my big disclaimer. Nothing I do at my office, nothing I talk about in my book, nothing in my workshops, my speaking presentations, my webinars, nothing treats, cures, prevents, fixes, defeats, or recovers people from autism. I don't treat autism. Everything I do is aimed at supporting vibrant health on the spectrum for people with autism, and I also help people that are off the spectrum too. So I treat nothing and I support everything, and there's no supplement that treats anything. Everything we do is with the goal of helping the body heal itself. Okay, so here's how I got into it. The night I brought my beautiful boy home from the hospital, I didn't know it yet, but I was already an autism mother, and it would take a while to find that out. He was a very sunny baby, but didn't sleep much. By the time he was 2 and 3 years old, I realized he was just irritable all of the time. He woke up grouchy. He still wasn't sleeping. He would just sleep 20, 30 minutes out of every 90 minutes. 24 hours a day around the clock. It was really exhausting. I never really got a full sleep cycle there. And then even worse, by the time he was 6 and 7 years old, he was very destructive around the house, very angry. We had a lot of screaming and yelling and holes in the wall, and school was difficult. I homeschooled him his first grade year because he just couldn't settle down and fit in. And, you know, my husband's a medical doctor, I'm a chiropractor, and we had excellent educations, but nothing prepared us for trying to help this child. The sleep was really awful. I mean, it just is exhausting. I think I spent years in a fog of exhaustion. However, just like Bill was talking about his grandson, the language was precocious. We always joke he came out talking. He wanted everything in 5 languages by the age of 2. He could read at 3 years old. We don't know how he learned. He could just read on a really high level. And even though we were healthy and ate a lot of organic, I breastfed, we did all natural food, I cooked everything, he had the most horrible gastrointestinal dysfunction, diarrhea, constipation, foul gas, took forever to potty train, even though his IQ was super high, and we just couldn't, you know, accomplish the basic things like toilet training. Finally, at age 7, which is really late, and I'm happy to say they are diagnosing kids younger these years, he was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. But by this time, we had 2 more sons, so I had 3 boys. And what I was beginning to find out was that not only do people on the spectrum have a lot of medical challenges, their siblings do too. Okay, so maybe not as bad as the person with autism, but we had so much going on in our house. My career was trashed. I was never able to practice for 14 years. And, you know, even though the other 2 weren't autistic, they had a lot of the traits. We have 2 cases of OCD. I have 1 with Tourette disorder. Attention and focus is non-existent when they were little. A lot of panic and anxiety, mood lability. They couldn't keep a steady mood. And it was overwhelming. We just felt like we were given a test that we hadn't studied for, even though we had, you know, college degrees and postgraduate degrees and doctor in front of our name. It was just, you don't know what to do. I went through exactly what Bill went through with Roman. Okay, so how do you find out about autism? Okay, if you go to this DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, you'll be happy to know it's no longer classed as a mental illness. It is a neurodevelopmental disorder, and it describes behaviors mostly. It talks about how they do socially and emotionally. It talks about how they don't understand nonverbal communication. Like if I put my hand on my hip and do the head nod, and most of you are going to know I'm mad at you, right? Okay, so a lot of these kids don't have a clue. One time, my son, before we knew he had autism, he was on the floor, 3 years old, playing and doing something that was making my husband really angry. And my husband began to raise his voice, and then he stood up, and his posture was angry, and the voice was strong, and my son just kept playing like nothing was happening. And I thought, does this kid not know he's about to get into trouble? And finally, he calmly looked up at my husband and went, "Dad, is that the facial expression of anger?" And we were just dumbfounded. We didn't know where that came from. But now in hindsight, we realized he wasn't picking up on the social cues that my husband was getting angry. Okay, number 3, they have trouble with developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships. They might rock and flap. Mine never did that. Some may need a schedule or a routine. Mine was Captain Chaos, no routine needed, okay, or wanted. Number 3 is a really nice professional way of talking about obsessions that they get, where they might get fixated on SpongeBob or airsoft guns or Pokemon, and that's all they can think about 24 hours a day. It's even hard to fall asleep. And these obsessions come and go and wax and wane. And sometimes they're about really nonsense things like ocean tide schedules, train tables, antique radios, just weird obsessions with things like that. And then the last one talks about sensory aspects that are hard for them. A lot of us know that they put their hands over their ears when sound is too loud. But sometimes, it's not just being too sensitive to things. Sometimes they don't process those sensory signals and they don't feel enough things. I have 8 little patients who have broken their arms and kept on playing. That hurt, but their brain didn't recognize those incoming sensory signals. One of those same kids at a different time fell and broke off his 2 front teeth and just pulled out the pieces and kept playing. He didn't process that pain signal. So there's sensory dysfunction going on there too. All right, look at these autism rates. Back before the 1980s, 1 in 10,000, and now 2018, 1 in 59. What's going on? The huge debate worldwide. Are there more cases, or is it just better diagnosis, or are people moving from other categories into the autism category? And the answer is it's a little bit of everything. But wow, 1 in 59. You need to know when you see this rate from the CDC that this is old. First of all, they're sampling 8-year-old children. So these, their birth year was 8 years before this rate, and then it takes a couple years to tabulate and calculate the rate. And so it's really old information when they announce the new autism rate. A quicker way to do that is the National Health Interview Survey. The latest year they have is 2014 to 16. It's more immediate. It's kind of a rougher calculation, but look, 2016, 1 in 36. I'll go back to that other slide, 2018, 1 in 59 with the slow method. So autism is on the rise for various reasons. If you split it down into gender, boys 1 in 28, girls 1 in 80. That's really scary. Okay, so roughly, and it is hard to calculate, 67,000 new cases of autism spectrum each year in the US alone. And I also want people to realize that means 67,000 are becoming adults every year and losing access to services and becoming dependent upon society. So it's really important that we tend to their medical challenges and support them appropriately so they can function at their highest. Okay, traditional wisdom says that it's about 5 times more common in boys than among girls. Doesn't seem to matter what race or how wealthy you are or anything like that, religion. However, in the past, I'd say 8 years or so, 7, 8 years, they're becoming aware that boys and girls are different on the autism spectrum, and they've probably been missing a lot of the females. Let me give you an example here. Let's play a screening game. All right, I want you to think of all the birds in the world, and I'm going to give you screening criteria to think of the one I'm thinking of. So this is a rather large bird, brilliant blue and green feathers, has a little crest on top, and a huge 5-foot tail that opens up, this big shimmering tail, right? So hopefully, giving you that criteria, most of you came up with the peacock, right? Okay. Well, guess what? The peacock is the male of the peafowl species. So only the male looks like this, and only those questions helped you find this male. And that's what we've been doing with the diagnostic criteria for autism. They've only studied the boys, and they came up with the screening criteria, and they're only finding mostly boys, 5 to 1 over girls. Here's what the female peafowl or peahen looks like. Can you believe that? Same species. So we have to come up with a completely different set of screening questions and diagnostic criteria for females. They're very different. They don't rock and flap or stack and line up as much as the boys. Nothing I say is going to be true for everybody, but they tend to have more imagination. They're better at friendships. They're more social. Their obsessions blend in with what other little girls are interested in: nature, seashells, fashion, hair clips. They tend to be diagnosed later because of this, and the pediatrician will go, no, it's probably not autism, she's a girl, it's going to be ADD, or they'll notice the OCD tendencies or something else, and they end up in some other category. They play differently. They have a few more social skills than boys. They can observe and imitate and superficially initially keep up a lot of social things going. They can really hang with the girls in the class, but then it's exhausting, and they tell me they have to go away and be alone and kind of recover from that, because it was almost an act to keep up that superficial social skill thing going. So anyway, keep in mind that we're probably missing a lot of the females, and it's probably the ratio is going to be more like 2-to-1 instead of 5-to-1. And the other myth is that autism is more severe in girls. And really, with the wrong diagnostic criteria, we've been catching those peacock girls, the ones that present more like boys and seemed more severe than the other girls. So all that's going to change soon. They're really coming up with new criteria for the females. Gender identity seems to really, the dysphoria and the, they call it gender identity disorder, seems to be really more common on the spectrum. A lot of them tell me they don't feel like either gender. They just feel like themselves, and they don't choose a gender. They don't feel sexual. If there are any clinicians listening tonight to the webinar, here is a link to some new clinical guidelines to help patients or clients that you feel may be struggling with their gender identity. And I'll be happy to email any of this to anyone. I'll give you my email towards the end here. Okay, so what is causing all of this autism? Is it a disorder? Is it just part of the natural human life? Pretty much at this point, this is the best model that they have come up with, where there is a genetic component. There's not an autism gene per se. It's hundreds of genes that are being affected by the environment early in development. Before birth, even sometimes before conception, mom's genes are turned on or off by the environment, and that's passed on to the baby. And so it's really a combination of genetics, environment, and the timing for those triggers. Get ready, they're getting ready to, come up with subtypes of autism. That probably explains why everybody is so different. They've already identified an inflammatory subtype and an immune dysfunction subtype. And I think there's going to be a lot more. We now have an autistic culture. How many TV shows have an autistic star in it now? You know, Sheldon, everybody loves him, Bazinga, okay? Adults with autism, the whole politics of autism has been changing over the 2 decades plus that I've been in it. And really, the adults are pretty militant and feel that it should not be treated as a disorder, or that they're broken or something's wrong with them. It should just be accepted as a difference. And yes, they have challenges, but they just need to be supported appropriately like anyone else does. So let me share with you how the language has been changing. Person-first language kind of tiptoes around the topic, and we talk about a little boy with autism, or that little girl's on the spectrum. This adult is, is autistic. We talk about the person first, and that language is usually used by families, friends, neighbors, employers, colleagues, things like that. Identity first is mostly used by autistic people themselves, and they don't want us to tiptoe around it usually. They just say, I'm autistic, I'm an ASEA, I'm an ASD woman, I'm an Audi man, and they own it. And so you need to be careful on social media. You kind of get, people will argue with you no matter which language you choose. Here are some words that I would like to see go away. Now, in the past, I've used many of these myself, but like I say, the politics are changing. So defeat, cure, treat, recover, prevent. I used to be a mother warrior. The British newspapers always say that they suffer from autism, or that they are sufferers. It's called a tragedy, a catastrophe. People think it's a mental illness, a disorder. And much to the surprise of most people I share this with, autistic people hate the puzzle pieces. And so I always encourage people, if you're going to do a fundraiser or anything for autism, don't use the puzzle pieces. Use something else. They hate them. Okay, here's some newer language that you can use. Neurodiversity and neurominority, wired differently, ASPE, Audi. Autistic is a word for non-autistic people, and it's just a neutral word. It's not an insult. So I'm autistic and my son is autistic, and that's one of the new words that have come about through this. Okay, so people on the spectrum have unique medical needs, and that's why I love to do this outreach and teach people about the medical needs, because we really need to start approaching it differently. When you take your child to the doctor, a lot of times, especially when my son was young, not so much now, but they would see all the facets of the health challenges of the spectrum. And they'd say, no, he's not autistic, he's oppositional defiant disorder, or he has reflux and OCD, or he's, they had all these different names for autism. Well, now it's all just called autism spectrum disorder. They also might say, well, no, it's not autism, it's just sensory processing disorder. They might see the anxiety, the depression. I have seen it called intermittent explosive disorder when the behavior's out of control. And 2 of my patients have come in with the label middle child syndrome. And I think they're making it up. I mean, I haven't heard of middle child syndrome before, okay? But no matter what, what they call it, the therapies and the medications seem to be focused on behaviors. It goes back to that DSM-5, listing and description of all the behaviors of autism. But medically, what is going on? When you go to, I'm sure if there are autism families listening tonight, they know exactly what I'm talking about when I say, you might be dealing with constipation or sleep disruption, irritability, aggression, attention and focus. And when you come out of your office visit, you're carrying, orders or prescriptions for laxatives, lifelong laxatives, sleeping medicines like clonidine, risperidone, Abilify, Lexapro for irritability. These are powerful antipsychotics that, traditionally haven't been tested in children, and they're putting them on it as young as 2 years of age. I've seen it a lot. And then the attention and focus issues. So then they're on stimulants, and we're seeing growth issues because they're not hungry all day because they're on these appetite suppressant stimulants. And there's just a ton of side effects with these. I'm not anti-medication, but to me, this is just more of a matching game. If you say my child can't poop, they say take Miralax. Can't sleep, take clonidine. Melatonin, just because it's natural, doesn't make it okay. It still means there's a problem with sleep that needs to be investigated. Can't behavior issues. They put them on these antipsychotics. It's really like a matching game. About 7 out of 10 children, and therefore adults on the spectrum, are getting prescription medications, even though they can't really say that the benefits really outweigh all those side effects and adverse effects. I always tell people, I used to ride horses. And, if a horse became irritable and acted out during the ride, no one stopped the ride and said, hey, does anyone have an antipsychotic approved for irritability in horses? No, we would stop the ride. We'd check under the saddle, the bit, the hooves. We might listen to the belly, see what's wrong, why the horse isn't feeling well. We don't do that for kids and adults on the spectrum. They go straight to the prescription pad, and that 2-year-old, 3-year-old goes on an antipsychotic. It's really kind of crazy because I feel the very best questions start with why. Why is this child irritable? Why can't she sleep? Why is he constipated? Why is there so much acid reflux? Why can't they pay attention? And I like to reach deeper and support the health issues that are causing these behaviors. These behaviors are just symptoms. They're not the problem. They're a symptom. So again, science geek that I am, I like to use medical research to peek inside and see what's causing the problem. So now I'm going to go over, I have several slides. These little icons represent categories of health challenges or dysfunction on the autism spectrum. The biggie by far is gastrointestinal dysfunction. If I could tell people this one slide right here is the most important thing at my practice, it doesn't seem like it. 50% on the spectrum don't make enough digestive enzymes. What? That sounds kind of crazy. What does that have to do with autism? Remember, the gut is the second brain. You wouldn't believe what can fall out of the picture with proper GI support. They don't have a good mix of beneficial bacteria in the GI tract, and they are far more prone to infection and imbalance in the GI tract. Dysbiosis is a big fancy word for saying that the yeast and the bacteria are out of balance in the gut. Here are some pictures, okay? Top left, signs of acid reflux in a little boy. Nodular esophagitis, a lot of inflammation, a lot of pain. On that top right there, that is feces, that's poop and bile that have refluxed back up into the stomach. And these patients will have breath that smells exactly like poop. And I have them at my office. It's really vicious acid reflux. And if they're nonverbal, they can't tell you about that, all that pain. And so it comes out as irritability and aggression. Bottom left, we see ulcers in the small intestine. Look at that, in that middle picture, that lymphoid hyperplasia. Does that look like a nice, tight, healthy gut to you? Okay, and then the bottom right picture, they are far more prone to infection. And so I like to tell people, don't be expecting a healthy gut in a lot of these people. Lay people would call it a leaky gut. It's really increased intestinal permeability, but it really creates a lot of problems, especially when they begin to eat wheat and dairy. Remember when Bill said Roman would eat chicken nuggets and mac and cheese and drink milk, and that's all they want? That's because when we consume wheat and dairy in our diet and begin to digest it and cleave it into smaller pieces, those middle peptides resemble morphine, and they're called casomorphins and gluteomorphins. That's why cheese is so constipating. It makes opiate-like peptides. They can even pass through the walls of a healthy gut. They have found these opioid peptides in urine. They've found them in cerebrospinal fluid in the brain. They cross the blood-brain barrier. And so it's almost like these kids are addicted to the opioids. And they eat that mac and cheese and the chicken nuggets and, a gallon of milk a day like it's their job. And it brings on this constipation, acid reflux. Acid reflux contributes to the wild sleep patterns. When you lay down at night, acid reflux is worse because gravity's gone. They're irritable, they're tired, they need stimulants to pay attention now. It is the biggest mess. It's just a vicious cycle. And so, we go in and we break this cycle. You all have probably heard of the gluten-free, casein-free diet. We don't do that unless we have to. I like to use very special digestive enzymes that they need anyway that will break down the opiates. And we have to be careful. We have to baby step them onto these enzymes. It's like going cold turkey off of heroin. They actually go into an opiate withdrawal. But then, a few weeks later, their brain is clear. Sometimes language emerges. The wild behaviors calm down. They begin to sleep through the night. It's really shocking what proper GI support can do for people on the spectrum with GI dysfunction. Okay, next category, immune dysfunction. And I'm super simplifying here, guys, okay? But 70 to 80% of the immune system lives in the gut, so it's no mystery that there's going to be immune dysfunction if there's GI dysfunction. They have more colds, more allergy, more asthma. They don't feel well. They miss a lot of school. They get behind. And so that immune dysfunction is really tough on them. Sometimes the immune system is so out of whack on the spectrum that they have identified autoimmune attack on 8 different brain tissues so far. And so that's a whole lot of stuff going on in the brain. I just described opiates and autoimmune attack, and they don't feel well, and they're tired from not sleeping. Okay, here's one of the biggies, chronic inflammation and oxidative stress. On the spectrum, it's like the on switch has just been left on. They're in chronic inflammation. Inflammation is throughout the body, including the brain. Johns Hopkins identified brain inflammation in many people on the spectrum. And all that inflammation generates free radicals that roam around damaging membranes, and that's called oxidative stress. And you heard Dr. Walker talking about oxidative stress earlier. And so I'm always looking for ways to support a healthy response to inflammation and oxidative stress. Another category, mitochondrial dysfunction. Those mitochondria are so sensitive to the oxidative stress. They estimate that 60% of kids and adults on the spectrum have acquired some mitochondrial dysfunction. Those are our power plants. That's where we get our energy. And I believe I heard Dr. Walker say that's where the redox molecules come from. So we really want to take care of our mitochondria and cool down that inflammation and oxidative stress. This one's getting a little technical. The methylation chemistry is disordered, but I'm going to give you the upshot of that. What it means is that they tend to be chronically low in glutathione, our body's #1 antioxidant, very important in many processes, but very important in detox. It helps us flush our body of metals and toxins. And on the autism spectrum, they're low in it. And so if the body can't flush those toxins, it stores them in fatty tissues. And the brain is covered in a lot of fat. And what they're finding now, research-wise, is that there's a lot of toxins stored in the brains of people with autism. And they have neurotoxicity or brain toxicity. All right, impaired nutrition. So their gut isn't working, they don't have enough digestive enzymes to unlock their food and get the nutrients needed to run all these thousands of metabolic cycles in the body. And so I'm always looking out for the nutrition of my patients too. So here's another whole set of things. Sensory processing disorder, probably 95% have trouble, either too sensitive or not sensitive enough. And I'm wondering how many people here tonight have heard of developmental optometry. This is a sensory processing issue. You know, we have 2 eyes. The brain isn't handling that incoming sensory information from the eyes, much less coordinating them. And a lot of times these young kids are seeing double. They tend to be clumsy. They don't know where they are in space. They can't catch a ball. They don't like 3D movies. They're careful on the stairs. And, you know, the eye doctor is saying their eyes are fine. But a developmental eye doctor will check and see how the brain is coordinating the 2 eyes. And that's how they get depth perception. And when they get those correct prism lenses in and get some vision therapy going, suddenly they're good on the stairs and they can catch a ball and they can learn in school. I mean, a lot of times these kids are being tutored and given aids and IEPs when really they just can't see. So I really feel strongly about this issue. It is the miracle referral in my office when I send probably 40% of my practice to a developmental optometrist. Here is an article I wrote. If you just Google my name, Janet Lintala, and double take, usually this article will pop up. If you can't find it, I'll email it to you. And it tells you what to do and how to find a good developmental optometrist. All right, another challenge on the spectrum. Tics and OCD, they have higher rates of tic disorders. Like I say, I have one son with Tourette disorder, so it runs in the siblings, and obsessive compulsive disorder. And it's not always rituals, it's the intrusive thought kind too. So you might not have a child who counts or checks the, to see if the stove's turned off. It's intrusive thoughts, so be on the lookout for that. ADD, ADHD, probably at least 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, struggle with attention and focus on the autism spectrum, and there are ways to naturally support that. Anxiety, depression, suicidal behaviors, they have higher rates of mental disorders, and you really want to watch out for depression. And if they grow up to be isolated, that's secondary depression, and sometimes that suicidal ideation sets in. And they have much higher rates than the holistic population of suicide. So you don't want to treat that naturally. You want to make, get them for medicine for anxiety and depression if you need to. All right, sedation dentistry. With all those sensory issues, a lot of the kids are just sedated. They can't tolerate a dental visit. I'm happy to say, and I have resources in a pass-coded section on my website. You can email me if any dentists are listening. There are lots of research going out on the West Coast about how to do a dental visit without sedation, and they're really figuring it out. They're doing some great work and finding ways to distract the kids, and they say they can get about any procedure done. So I have a lot of goodies on my website if anybody wants to email for that. And lastly, and of course these are just the major challenges, I'm not hitting it all here, seizure disorders. About 30% of folks on the spectrum have a seizure disorder. So there's a lot going on in the brain of people on the autism spectrum. Let me sum it up for you. They might have some of these or all of these. Opioid peptides from that gluten and dairy in the diet. Toxins from the infections and imbalance of yeast and bacteria in the gut. Brain inflammation, brain toxicity, autoimmune attack on the brain. Oxidative stress on the brain, nutritional deficiency, so those metabolic cycles can't run. tics, seizures. They might have double or jumbled vision, from the poor sensory integration. Wow, and they can't even tell you about this, if they don't have their language. And so here's what you see. You see this beautiful child who seems a little foggy, is kind of struggling to listen to what you're saying. And when you talk to the child, sometimes it takes 20 to 30 seconds for them to answer. I highly suggest you just wait, ask your question and wait, because they're powering through a lot in that brain, more than what you can see going on. They might have all of this, okay? You see the sweet little child, but this is what you get, all of these different categories of challenges that they are having to power through all day, every day, to get anything accomplished. All right, so looking at the DSM-5, these are those criteria, the diagnostic criteria from the DSM-5. Does any of that describe the medical challenges on the spectrum? No. So this is what you see. You might see someone with trouble with relationships, or not seeing their social cues, or interested in train tables or things like that, or rocking and flapping. But this is what you get. Just take a second and look at all that. And this is what children and adults may have to power through each day, some or all of this. And you know what? As soon as you parents get a diagnosis, we're like into action mode. We're going to get speech therapy, occupational therapy. We're going to go meet with the school and get an IEP, get them into a separate classroom for autism. And you know what? All of this needs to be cleaned up first. Otherwise, you're leaving the child to power through this all day. So I feel strongly that the health issues need to be addressed first before we put them into therapies in school and social situations. Because if not, I think we're asking them to try their hardest, and they do. They've got great heart, but they don't feel very well. So we're asking them to do their best when they probably feel their worst. All right, sorry, I'm very passionate about that. Okay, so my take-home message is there's way more to autism spectrum disorder than what's in the DSM-5. A lot of medical things, physiology things going on, and it all needs to be treated or supported appropriately. Okay, the American Academy of Pediatrics does point out medications have not been proven to correct the core deficits of ASDs and are not the primary treatment. I am not against medications, but they should not be the first thing you reach for. Remember, the best questions start with why. Ask the why questions, figure it out, and give them what they need. I am the author of The Unprescription for Autism. It has won a lot of awards. I'm pretty proud of that. It's in 2 languages, French and English. And I wrote the book that I wish someone had handed to me the night I brought my child home. We both would have gotten a lot more sleep and my son would have had an easier childhood. We've had quite the journey together, so I don't regret it. We've learned a lot, and we're using it to help others. This book is available on Amazon, French Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. You just Google it and it's out there. My nonprofit gives away a lot of these books, and it has the basic support protocols for GI and immune support. And it explains it, has 300 scientific references. It'll all make sense. Like Bill said, a lot of the most common thing people say to me is, you could have put my child's picture on the cover of that book. So I hear that a lot. So my basic protocol, when this book came out in March of 2016, I didn't know about redox molecules. And my basic support protocol was the digestive enzymes with DPP-4, that's the one that breaks down the opiates, good bacteria, and a light antimicrobial rotation to kind of support balance of that microbiome. And when I began to learn about redox molecules and the Torrent gene study came out, hey, I have a degree in genetics, that caught my attention. And I started looking at these categories: the innate immune system pathway, inflammation, digestive enzyme signaling pathways. Hello, yes, I was interested in these redox molecules. Here I've done a side-by-side sort of comparison with what the gene study found about these molecules on the left and what I see in my office and in my own family, here on the autism spectrum. And so immune dysfunction, inflammation, oxidative stress, people on the spectrum are low in glutathione, and these molecules raise glutathione. They tend to be high in the toxic load, and this supplement helps detox. They have GI dysfunction. Half of them don't make enough enzymes. Here's a supplement that supports the digestive enzyme signaling pathways. Wow, I was really excited. So now I've sort of changed up my GI support protocol. And this is the one that I'm happy to email to anyone, loveautismhealth@gmail.com, free. I'm not trying to sell you anything. And I have included a new product that's stabilized lignite extract that closes the tight gap junctions in the gut. Still, I'm using those digestive enzymes, probiotics, antimicrobials, and now I've been using the redox signaling molecules. I've used them probably for the last year at least, and now I'm using them in my practice for months, and really excited about what we're going to see there. So again, email me if you'd like a copy of that. So before I leave, I just, I did kind of, to tell a little bit on my son how he was aggressive or destructive. And I don't want you to think he stayed that way. He's an adult now. He's an Eagle Scout and Assistant Scoutmaster. Those of you in the scouting world know they have to like you to elect you patrol leader at Jamboree. Okay. He has a college degree. He drives. He's hilarious. He has the most wicked, funny sense of humor. And he's working on a novel and a screenplay, and that's really what he's studying. He's an extrovert, and that really surprises people. They go, how can a person with autism be an extrovert? You know what? Don't underestimate these folks. In a lot of ways, they're just like you and me. He wanted to earn some money, after college while he's, you don't get a paycheck right away from writing. So he is an extroverted autistic bartender, and he loves it. Okay. And this update I'm happy to share. He has a girlfriend. They're going on 3 years now. Lovely girl. She's going to law school now. And I'm just so happy. This was not in his future. When he was 7, 8, 9 years old, people were pressuring us to put him away into residential living for life and just say, he needs to go to an institution. And so we didn't give up, and we tended to those health issues. So I love this little saying, sometimes the questions are complicated and the answers are simple. Thank you, Dr. Seuss. And my last slide, I just wanted to say, at Autism Health, we are going to run for everyone's New Year's resolutions who wants to try and see if redox molecules do anything for them. We're challenging people to try them for 90 days. It could be any 90 days. It doesn't have to start on January 1st. But on our Facebook page, we're going to pin a post to the top about redox molecules. And we're encouraging people anywhere, to comment and share and tell us if it's doing anything for you. And if it is, what it's doing. And every week, whoever comments and shares, we're going to do a little drawing and give away a tube of the redox signaling gel, which Bill talked about a little bit. So that's my presentation. I hope we all learned a little bit about autism. And William, I guess I'll turn it back over to you.
Wow, fantastic. Dr. Lintala, that was absolutely amazing. I learned so much. And I've got some friends that are challenged this way. And I can't wait to share this with them. I know there's at least one of them that's joined us tonight. So I know this information is so valuable for so many. And thanks for giving us the opportunity to get the word out. I want to also let everybody know that we have one more person that wants to share very quickly. This person has an amazing story, and Susan Marie Kaiser. Are you with us, Susan?
Yeah, we're going to switch chairs. Hold on.
All right, perfect. So I know Susan had just discovered the power of redox, and Susan has a son, Zach, right, Susan? And Zach is 6 years old, and there was an incident that occurred at 18 months old, and at that point he became nonverbal. And so, Susan, how did you discover the science?
Well, actually, a sweet lady at my church.
Maybe speak up a little bit. We can't hear you very well.
A lady at my church introduced me to redox, and I came to a presentation here at Jim's, and that's when he mentioned ATP and mitochondrial. And when he
Awesome.
said that, I already knew what that meant. So that sold me.
Awesome. And how long ago did you introduce the redox molecules to Zach?
About a month ago.
A month ago, so not very long.
No.
And have you noticed any changes?
Yeah. There's so many changes. I couldn't keep up with him. The first week, he started playing with his kitchen set, and then he started imitating the car noise and playing with the little cars. I made a list because I wasn't going to be able to remember anything. Just a couple of days ago, I gave him a haircut, and I was able to use clippers on him for the first time. And usually when I have to cut his hair, it takes 2 or 3 days, and I have to lock the bathroom door so he won't run out or crawl up the wall. But he stood there and he was, he let me do it. He's approaching animals. He was very afraid of animals, crawl out of his skin just with, animals trying to approach him. What else?
I was going to say, and I know there's something really magical that happened, right? Because he began to say some things, right?
Oh yes, he has said the word okay, I love you, mom, and actually his older sister had FaceTime us, I think about a week or 2 ago, and this really freaked me out. She was asking him, where's mom at? And he would point right where I was. And that was just for him to grasp that concept was amazing. Wow. So yeah, that. And then another huge thing is before he would kind of do half hugs, kind of put his body, for a hug. But this time he actually hugs you like just anybody would hug you.
Well, I can imagine what you must have felt when he was able to say, I love you, mom.
Yeah.
That's got to be just magical. And all those things that you shared, this is life-changing for him. So thank you. That's so special. So wouldn't you say that the future is looking a little better than it did prior to learning about this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm ready for him to drink a whole bottle.
Well, Susan Marie, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for being brave enough to get on here and share your amazing story with Zach, with all of us, because I believe that your efforts will help change the lives of other people. And so again, thank you for being brave and being willing to get up here and be on TV, so to speak, and share your story.
Well, thank you guys.
Yeah, you're so welcome. You guys, I want to wrap up, and I think it's appropriate for me to just add one more disclaimer, you guys. The stabilized redox signaling molecules that we talked about are not meant to treat any medical condition or disease. I just want to be really clear about that, okay? I want to thank Dr. Richard Walker, Dr. Lintala, Bill Perry, and again, Susan Marie, and again, Jim and Ann, thanks for making this possible. And really, for all the people who are here tonight that are interested in learning more about this, please reach out to the person who invited you. They'll be able to help get you started. They'll point you in the right direction. And I think this has just been an amazing evening. And thanks for spending this time with us.
Thank you, William. Thank you, everyone. God bless. Bye-bye.
God bless.